Hidden genius. Eleanor Winters adjusted her glasses and tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she entered TechVision's glass headquarters. At 32, she possessed the kind of brilliance that rarely called attention to itself. Her modest wardrobe, today a simple navy blouse and charcoal slacks, reflected her personality. Functional, unassuming, focused on substance rather than show. For 3 years, Eleanor had worked in the shadows of TechVision's development team, her innovative algorithms powering applications that others took credit for. Her desk was tucked away in a corner of the open office, adorned only with a small potted succulent and a dog-eared copy of advanced neural network architecture. A stark contrast to her colleagues' cluttered workspaces filled with branded swag and motivational posters. That morning, Director of Development Vanessa Porter strode through the office in her trademark crimson heels, gathering the team for an emergency meeting. "We have a consultant visiting today," she announced, her voice carrying the artificial sweetness she reserved for important occasions. "He's evaluating department efficiency for the executive board. Everyone bring your project files and look sharp." Eleanor gathered her notebooks, containing sketches of a revolutionary user interface she'd been developing after hours. The design could potentially cut load times in half while doubling user engagement. If anyone would listen. In the conference room, a man Eleanor had never seen before sat quietly at the far end of the table. He wore a simple gray button-down and black-framed glasses, his expression neutral as he observed the team filing in. If not for Vanessa's nervous glances in his direction, Eleanor might have mistaken him for another mid-level employee. "This is Mr. Sullivan," Vanessa introduced with an overly bright smile. "He'll be observing our processes this week." What no one in the room knew was that Mr. Sullivan was actually Harrison Grant, the 41-year-old founder and CEO of TechVision. Worth $12.7 billion, Harrison had built his empire from a college dorm room app into a tech giant through sheer innovation and relentless work. Lately, however, reports of toxic management and stifled creativity had reached his attention, prompting this undercover visit. As the meeting progressed, Harrison watched Vanessa dominate the conversation, while systematically dismissing input from certain team members. His eyes narrowed when she interrupted a soft-spoken woman who had barely spoken 3 words. "Eleanor, we're discussing serious solutions here, not pet projects," Vanessa said with a dismissive wave. "Why don't you stick to debugging the code others write? That seems more your level." A few team members snickered. Others studied their tablets intently, avoiding eye contact. Harrison noticed Eleanor's shoulders stiffen slightly, but her expression remained composed. "The algorithm I've developed addresses the exact latency issues we're discussing," Eleanor replied quietly. "If I could just demonstrate." "We don't have time for theoretical exercises," Vanessa cut in. "Besides, your last suggestion cost us 3 days of development time." "That was because you implemented it incorrectly," Eleanor said, so softly that Harrison had to lean forward to hear. Vanessa's face flushed. "Perhaps if you spent as much time on teamwork as you do hiding behind your screen, you'd understand how things actually work here." She turned to Harrison with a practiced smile. "Mr. Sullivan, you'll have to excuse some of our more technically minded staff. They don't always grasp the business realities." Harrison nodded non-committally, his gaze lingering on Eleanor, who had opened her notebook and begun sketching something, seemingly detached from the conversation swirling around her. Yet he noticed her hand trembled slightly as she wrote. After the meeting, Harrison lingered in the hallway, watching as Eleanor returned to her isolated desk. While others clustered around the break room discussing weekend plans, she immersed herself in her work, a solitary figure illuminated by the glow of her monitor. Curiosity piqued, Harrison casually approached. "That was an interesting meeting," he offered. Eleanor glanced up, surprised anyone had sought her out. "That was actually one of the better ones," she replied, with a hint of dry humor. "Mind if I ask what you're working on?" Harrison gestured to her screen. Eleanor hesitated, then turned her monitor slightly. "It's an adaptive interface that learns user behavior patterns. It could reduce our server load by 40% if implemented." Harrison's eyes widened as he scanned her code. "This is remarkable." "Thank you," Eleanor said, a genuine smile briefly transforming her features. "Though I doubt it will ever see the light of day." "Why not?" Harrison asked. Her smile faded. "Let's just say innovation here follows a very specific path, and that path rarely runs through this desk." As Harrison walked away, he made a decision. Tomorrow would bring changes to tech vision that no one, especially Vanessa Porter, would see coming. The revelation. The following morning, Harrison arrived early at Tech Vision headquarters, this time dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that subtly announced his authority. He'd spent half the night reviewing personnel files and project histories, his focus repeatedly returning to Eleanor Winters. Her performance metrics were stellar, yet her advancement had been consistently blocked by mediocre evaluations, citing communication issues and lack of leadership presence. The executive boardroom buzzed with nervous energy as department heads gathered for what they believed was a routine quarterly review. Vanessa Porter positioned herself prominently near the head of the table. Her crimson blazer, a beacon of confidence. "Sullivan will be joining us shortly," she announced to her peers. "I've prepared a comprehensive presentation on our department's innovations." She tapped her tablet with manicured nails, projecting sleek graphics onto the wall screen. "Actually, I'm already here," Harrison said, stepping through the doorway. Vanessa beamed. "Wonderful. I was just telling everyone about—" "And I'm not Mr. Sullivan," Harrison continued, sliding his company ID across the polished table. "I'm Harrison Grant." The room fell silent as recognition dawned. Several executives straightened instinctively, while others frantically adjusted their appearances. Vanessa's smile froze, her complexion paling beneath her perfect makeup. "I've spent the past day observing how Tech Vision operates when no one thinks the founder is watching," Harrison continued, his voice measured. "It's been educational." He tapped his own tablet, bringing up a new presentation. "Before we continue with scheduled agendas, I'd like to review some overlooked innovations. Ms. Winters, would you please join us?" The door opened again as a confused Eleanor entered, clutching her notebook. She faltered momentarily upon seeing the assembled executives. "Ms. Winters," Harrison said warmly, "please show us your adaptive interface project." Eleanor glanced uncertainly between Harrison and Vanessa before comprehension dawned. "You're not a consultant," she said softly. "No," Harrison confirmed. "I'm the founder of this company, and I'd very much like to see the work you've been developing, in spite of considerable obstacles." With trembling hands, Eleanor connected her tablet to the display system. As her designs appeared on screen, she found her voice, explaining the elegant architecture and potential applications with growing confidence. The room remained silent, but Harrison noted the shifting expressions, from skepticism to surprise to genuine interest. When she finished, Harrison turned to the board. "What you've just seen represents the kind of innovation that built Tech Vision. Yet somehow, this project was repeatedly sidelined." He fixed Vanessa with a steady gaze. "Miss Porter, yesterday you belittled this employee in front of her peers. Would you care to explain that decision?" Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. "Mr. Grant, with all due respect, Managing creative personalities requires firm guidance. Eleanor's ideas, while interesting, often lack practical application. That's not what our engineering assessment indicates, Harrison interrupted, displaying a technical evaluation he'd commissioned overnight. According to our senior architects, her interface could revolutionize our entire platform. He stood, placing both hands on the table as he leaned forward. I founded this company on two principles: revolutionary innovation and respect for every contributor. Somewhere along the way, the culture I envisioned has been corrupted. Harrison walked to the windows overlooking the campus. Effective immediately, I'm restructuring the development division. Ms. Porter, you're being reassigned to our Sydney office as a junior project coordinator. You'll report to the regional director on Monday. Gasps rippled through the room. Vanessa's face flushed crimson, matching her blazer. You can't possibly. I can, and I have, Harrison stated firmly. Tech Vision doesn't advance by belittling talent. We succeed by nurturing it. He turned to Eleanor, whose expression reflected stunned disbelief. Ms. Winters, I'd like you to lead a special innovation task force, reporting directly to me. Your first assignment is implementing your interface across our platform. Select whatever team members you need. The meeting adjourned in a daze of whispered conversations and shocked glances. As executives filed out, Harrison noticed Eleanor hanging back, her notebook clutched against her chest like armor. Mr. Grant, she began hesitantly, while I appreciate the opportunity, it's not charity, Harrison interrupted gently. It's recognition. Something you should have received long ago. Eleanor shook her head. People will think I only got this position because you're brilliant? Because your work speaks for itself? Harrison smiled. Let them think what they want. Results will silence doubts faster than any defense I could offer. Later that afternoon, Eleanor sat alone in a new office, Vanessa's former space, staring at the blank walls with a mixture of trepidation and disbelief. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. May I come in? Harrison asked, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Eleanor nodded, accepting the offered cup. Thank you, but why me? There are dozens of talented developers here. Harrison leaned against the edge of her desk. When I started this company, I was sleeping on a friend's couch, coding 18 hours a day while people told me my ideas were worthless. He studied his coffee, thoughtfully. Success isn't just about having good ideas. It's about persisting when no one believes in them. Even you. I believe in my work, Eleanor countered. Exactly. Harrison smiled. That quiet certainty is rare and valuable. Most people need constant validation. Eleanor sipped her coffee, considering his words. What happens now? Now, Harrison said, you build your team, implement your vision, and prove everyone wrong, including yourself. He walked to the door, pausing before leaving. The meeting with potential team members starts in 30 minutes. I suggest you prepare to lead, Miss Winters. It's what you were always meant to do. As the door closed behind him, Eleanor turned to her computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. For 3 years, she'd worked in shadows, her voice silenced. Now suddenly thrust into light, she faced her greatest challenge, believing she belonged there. With a deep breath, she began typing, organizing her thoughts for the meeting. Outside her new office, whispers already circulated about favoritism and luck. She would answer them the only way she knew how, with brilliant, undeniable work. H1, rising from shadows. The first month of Eleanor's leadership was a baptism by fire. Each morning, she arrived at Tech Vision headquarters before sunrise. The silence of empty corridors, her only companion as she prepared for battles that awaited. By day, she navigated the treacherous waters of corporate politics. By night, she coded until her vision blurred, determined to prove Harrison's faith justified. Her team, 7 developers she'd hand-selected occupied a glass-walled space they'd nicknamed the Fishbowl, their work constantly visible to passing executives. This transparency was Eleanor's idea, a deliberate challenge to the whispers that followed her promotion. Why put ourselves on display like this? Asked Rohan Patel, her brilliant but introverted senior developer, as they arranged their workstations. It's like working under a microscope. Eleanor adjusted her monitor with deliberate precision. Because I'm tired of shadows, she replied. Let them watch us change the future. The shadows she spoke of weren't merely metaphorical. Former colleagues now avoided her in the cafeteria, conversations faltering when she approached. Damian Wilson, Vanessa's former deputy, who'd expected to inherit her position, made his resentment clear through pointed emails questioning every decision. Another complaint from Damian, sighed Jinho Kim, her UX specialist, passing her a tablet during their morning stand-up. He's demanding access to our development server for oversight purposes. Eleanor skimmed the message, noting its passive-aggressive tone, an unnecessary copy list, including several board members. Forward it to legal, she said calmly. Request clarification on proper protocols for accessing proprietary development environments. Jinho grinned. Bureaucracy is a weapon. I like your style, boss. These daily skirmishes consumed precious energy, but Eleanor refused to let them derail her vision. The adaptive interface, now codenamed Helios, was progressing rapidly, its algorithm learning and evolving beyond even her initial expectations. 6 weeks into the project, Harrison requested a private progress review. Eleanor prepared meticulously, anticipating questions that might expose weaknesses in her leadership or technical approach. Harrison's office occupied the top floor, its panoramic windows framing the city skyline. Unlike the ostentatious displays of wealth common among tech billionaires, his space was understated. Functional furniture, walls lined with bookshelves rather than awards, a worn leather couch suggesting long nights of contemplation. No presentation? He asked as Eleanor entered empty-handed. I thought we might try something different. She withdrew a slim prototype tablet from her bag. Experience speaks louder than slides. Harrison accepted the device, eyebrows rising as the interface responded to his touch, anticipating his next action before his fingers completed their movement. Applications opened seamlessly, content reorganizing based on his interaction patterns. It's learning already, he murmured, navigating through screens with growing appreciation. It began mapping your behavior patterns the moment you touched it, Eleanor confirmed. By tomorrow, it will have customized completely to your usage style, reducing cognitive friction by approximately 38%. Harrison set the tablet down carefully. This exceeds the specifications we discussed. How did you achieve this level of responsiveness? We didn't, Eleanor admitted. The system evolved beyond our parameters during testing. It's developing intelligence we didn't explicitly program. Potential concerns. Extensively tested. The learning is bounded by strict ethical frameworks. Eleanor leaned forward. Harrison, it's not just responding to users, it's understanding them. He nodded thoughtfully. And your team? Here it was. The question she'd prepared for. The opportunity to showcase her leadership. Instead, unexpected honesty escaped. Struggling, she admitted. Brilliant, dedicated, but facing internal resistance that's slowing our progress. Damian's faction is systematically undermining us. Harrison's expression remained neutral. And how are you addressing this? Directly when possible, strategically when necessary. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. But every hour spent navigating politics is an hour lost to innovation. Politics are inevitable in organizations, Harrison observed, studying her. Perhaps especially for leaders who challenge established hierarchies. Eleanor recognized his gentle probe. Was she asking for intervention? The old Eleanor might have accepted rescue. The woman she was becoming refused it. "We'll manage," she stated firmly. "My concern is timeline impact. We need 2 additional weeks to complete initial testing." Harrison nodded, approval flickering briefly across his features. "Granted. But I'm curious. What would you do about Damien if you were in my position?" "I wouldn't remove him," Eleanor said without hesitation. "Opposition forces refinement of ideas. But I would establish clear boundaries around behavior that impedes progress." Harrison's lips curved slightly. "Consider those boundaries established. Anything else you need?" "Access to the quantum computing division for advanced simulations," she replied promptly, pulling a proposal from her bag. "Their resources could accelerate our testing phase." As their meeting concluded, Harrison walked her to the elevator. "You've changed," he observed quietly. Eleanor considered this. Not changed. "Just uncovered, and either way, it suits you." The elevator arrived, and he stepped back. "Dinner this weekend to discuss quantum integration. Strictly professional, of course." Something in his tone made Eleanor look up sharply, catching an unguarded expression that vanished instantly. "Strictly professional," she echoed, stepping into the elevator. "Text me details." The doors closed on Harrison's thoughtful face, leaving Eleanor with a disconcerting realization. Somewhere between boardroom battles and late-night coding sessions, her admiration for Harrison Grant had evolved into something more complicated. Something that threatened the hard-won respect she'd finally achieved. Back in the fishbowl, crisis awaited. A catastrophic server failure had corrupted their primary development environment. 3 weeks of work potentially lost. Backup protocols failed. Jinho reported tensely, surrounded by anxious team members. Primary and secondary systems both compromised simultaneously. "That's impossible without deliberate interference," Rohan muttered, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Someone deliberately bypassed security protocols." Eleanor absorbed this, ice forming in her stomach. Sabotage meant their project threatened someone enough to warrant destruction. It also meant her leadership faced its first true test. "Call the team together," she instructed calmly, rolling up her sleeves. "We're not just recovering, we're rebuilding better. And when we identify the source of this attack, they'll learn what happens when you underestimate people who work in shadows." As her team gathered around, Eleanor felt something shifting within her, confidence hardening into resolve, talent transforming into leadership. Harrison had recognized something in her she hadn't yet seen in herself. Now, facing adversity, she finally glimpsed what he had known all along. Bridges built. 3 days without sleep left Eleanor's team haggard, but triumphant. Not only had they recovered their corrupted work, but they'd discovered something unexpected in the ruins. An elegant solution to a persistent latency issue that had plagued the Helios interface. Sometimes destruction creates space for something better, Eleanor told her exhausted developers as they celebrated with takeout pizza in the fishbowl at midnight. "Go home, sleep for 24 hours. That's an order." As her team filtered out, Eleanor remained, staring at the lines of code glowing on her screen. The sabotage investigation had uncovered a trail leading directly to Damien Wilson, who'd been escorted from the building that afternoon. Security badge confiscated. His parting glare had promised this wasn't finished, but Eleanor found herself oddly grateful for his interference. Without it, they might never have found the breakthrough. "You should follow your own orders," came Harrison's voice from the doorway. Eleanor looked up, startled. His usual polished appearance had given way to rumpled sleeves and loosened tie, suggesting he'd been working late himself. "I will," she promised, saving her work, just finishing documentation. Harrison entered, dropping into a chair opposite her desk. I reviewed the security team's report. Wilson had help, possibly from our competitors. Industrial espionage? Eleanor frowned. More like opportunism. Word of Helios has leaked. Several firms would pay handsomely to delay our launch. Harrison studied her, concern evident. You look exhausted. Eleanor laughed softly. Says the man with dark circles under his eyes. His hand unconsciously touched his face. A disarmingly human gesture from someone she'd begun to view as somehow more than human. Touché. I've been dealing with board members nervous about Helios. Some fear it's too revolutionary. They fear change, Eleanor countered, closing her laptop decisively. The same fear that keeps brilliant ideas trapped in notebooks. Harrison smiled. Speaking of dinner, we never had that discussion about quantum integration. Is that still strictly professional? The question escaped before Eleanor could censor it, hanging between them like a challenge. Harrison's expression grew serious. That depends on you. The company has policies about... I know the policies, Eleanor interrupted. I also know they exist for good reasons. Power imbalances complicate relationships. They do, Harrison agreed. Which is why I've been... careful. Eleanor gathered her courage. What if we were just two people having dinner? Not CEO and project leader. Just Eleanor and Harrison. His eyes held hers for a long moment. I'd like that very much. 2 hours later, they sat in a small Ethiopian restaurant miles from the tech corridor, where neither was likely to be recognized. Over shared platters and conversation that deliberately avoided work, Eleanor discovered Harrison collected vintage science fiction paperbacks, practiced meditation daily, and had once hitchhiked across Europe before founding TechVision. Why tech? She asked, curious about the path that had led to his empire. Harrison considered this as he tore a piece of injera bread. I wanted to build tools that amplified human potential, he said simply. Technology should liberate people, not enslave them. Is that why you named our project Helios? Eleanor asked. The sun god who brought light? Harrison looked surprised. I didn't name it. Your documentation used that code name. My team chose it, Eleanor clarified. I assumed you'd suggested it. Synchronicity, Harrison murmured. Bringing light has always been my goal for TechVision. Perhaps you sensed that unconsciously. As the evening progressed, Eleanor felt walls crumbling, not just her carefully constructed professional distance, but Harrison's as well. Behind the billionaire persona existed a man still driven by the idealistic vision that had launched his company from nothing. What about you? He asked as they walked to her apartment, the night air cool against their skin. Why hide your brilliance for so long? Eleanor considered this. I wasn't hiding, she said finally. I was waiting for the right moment to be seen. There's a difference, Harrison. An awkward pause ensued. The inevitable moment where professional boundaries either held or dissolved. Thank you for dinner, she said formally, keys jingling in her hand. Harrison nodded, maintaining a respectful distance. Eleanor, whatever happens between us, or doesn't happen, won't affect your position. You've earned your place. I know, she replied with newfound confidence. That's why I can do this. She leaned forward, brushing her lips gently against his cheek. A gesture balanced precisely between friendship and possibility. Good night, Harrison. Hémon, the Helios launch, transformed TechVision. What began as an interface redesign evolved into a philosophy that permeated every aspect of the company, championing both technological brilliance and human dignity. Under Eleanor's guidance, her team expanded to 30 developers across 3 continents. Their glass-walled workspace becoming a symbol of the company's renewed commitment to transparency. 8 months after her promotion, Eleanor stood backstage at TechCon, the industry's premier innovation showcase, preparing to unveil Helios to the world. Her tailored charcoal suit, a deliberate echo of Harrison's style, projected confidence she now genuinely felt. "Nervous?" Harrison asked, joining her in the wings as the previous speaker concluded. "Terrified," she admitted, with a small smile. But ready. Their relationship had evolved cautiously in the intervening months. Professional collaboration gradually enriched by deeper understanding. They'd been careful, maintaining appropriate boundaries at work, while exploring their connection through long conversations, shared interests, and occasional dinners away from corporate scrutiny. Nothing improper had occurred, yet something profound had changed between them. Mutual respect deepening into something neither had anticipated. "Remember," Harrison said softly, "they're not just here to see technology. They're here to witness transformation." Eleanor nodded, understanding he meant both Helios and herself. As her name was announced, she squeezed his hand briefly before walking onto the stage. For 20 minutes, she commanded the attention of 3,000 industry leaders, demonstrating how Helios adapted instantaneously to each user, learning preferences, anticipating needs, and creating a uniquely personal experience. The interface that had once existed only in her notebooks now represented the future of human-computer interaction. "Technology should serve humanity," Eleanor concluded, her quiet voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. "Not by replacing human thought, but by amplifying our natural creativity and connection. Helios doesn't think for you, it thinks with you." The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Afterward, amid a swirl of reporters and industry executives clamoring for her attention, Eleanor caught sight of Harrison across the reception hall. He stood apart from the crowd, watching her with undisguised pride. When their eyes met, he raised his glass slightly in silent acknowledgement. Later that evening, they escaped to a quiet rooftop garden above the convention center. "The board voted unanimously to approve your promotion," Harrison said, as they gazed at city lights below. "Chief Innovation Officer, effective immediately." Eleanor absorbed this news, recognizing its significance. "That puts us on equal footing." "Professionally, yes," Harrison acknowledged, understanding her implication. "And the board knows about us?" "They've been informed of our personal connection," he confirmed. "The ethics committee reviewed the situation and found no conflict of interest, given your new position reports to the board." "Not directly to me." Eleanor smiled. "You've been planning this for some time." "Planning implies calculation," Harrison corrected gently. "I prefer to think of it as creating possibilities." Eleanor turned to face him fully. "3 years ago, I was invisible. Today, I presented revolutionary technology to the world's leading innovators." That transformation wasn't about technology. It was about being truly seen. "I saw you that first day," Harrison reminded her. "Your brilliance was always there." "But I couldn't see it myself," Eleanor acknowledged. That was the real change. Harrison reached for her hand, his touch no longer tentative. "What happens now?" Eleanor interlaced her fingers with his. "Now we build something new, together, as equals." In the months that followed, Eleanor and Harrison navigated their evolving relationship with the same thoughtful care they applied to their technology. Tech vision flourished under their complementary leadership. Harrison's visionary perspective, balanced by Eleanor's attention to human experience. The company culture transformed as well, with talent rising regardless of background or personal style. A fishbowl became a model for development teams throughout the organization, its transparency fostering innovation rather than inhibiting it. 1 year after the Helios launch, Eleanor and Harrison stood together at TechVision's annual company picnic, watching employees and their families enjoy the summer afternoon. No longer did Eleanor feel like an outsider looking in. This community now partly reflected her values. "I was thinking," Harrison said casually, "about that first meeting when Vanessa dismissed your ideas." Eleanor smiled. "Ancient history." "Not entirely," Harrison countered. "That moment changed everything, for both of us." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. "I had planned something elaborate, but that wouldn't be us, would it?" Eleanor's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a simple platinum ring set with a single luminous stone. "It's not a diamond," he explained. "It's a rare form of aluminite, a mineral that absorbs light and transforms it. It reminded me of you." Eleanor touched the stone gently. "Harrison, I don't want to be just your colleague or even just your partner," he said quietly. "I want to build a life with you, one where we both continue to transform and grow." His voice held a hint of vulnerability she'd rarely heard. "Will you marry me, Eleanor?" Her answer came without hesitation, as clear and certain as the code she wrote. "Yes." As Harrison slipped the ring onto her finger, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From overlooked engineer to respected leader, from isolation to connection. The transformation hadn't been about gaining power or recognition, but about discovering her authentic voice and using it to create positive change. "What are you thinking?" Harrison asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Eleanor smiled, the afternoon sun illuminating her face. "That sometimes the quietest voices carry the most important messages, if someone cares enough to listen." Harrison drew her close. "I'm listening," he promised. "Always." Together they turned toward their gathered employees, ready to share their news. Two people who had found in each other not just love, but the courage to become their truest selves.